Thanks, Graham. Good morning, everyone. My name is David Liddell. I'm a reporter with the Directorate for Planning and Environmental Appeals. And so can you just all give me a wave or a thumbs up just so as I can see that everyone can hear me okay? And just let me know if you can't. Okay, thank you. As I said earlier, I can still hear a bit of feedback there. Can I ask if you're simply observing, can you just turn your cameras and your microphones off, and you can watch and listen in. For everyone who's participating, for now, if you keep your cameras on, but if you can mute your microphone, just and keep it muted as you're not speaking, just so that we can all hear each other, okay? I'll ask for people to introduce themselves shortly, but I just have a few formalities just to go through first. So, as you're no doubt aware, I've been appointed by the Scottish Ministers to report to them with recommendations on whether the proposed Rigghill wind farm at Fardens, east of Skelmorlie, should receive planning permission. And the description for that proposed development is 10 wind turbines with a maximum blade tip of 149.9 metres, with associated access and infrastructure. And this is a pre-examination meeting, so as we can discuss the arrangements for some accompanying site inspections and for a public inquiry session that I think I need to help me reach my decision on whether or not the appeal should be allowed. So this speaking report will be available to view on our website. We'll retain it and use it for purposes including document retention, training, and for providing information to members of the public. So by participating, you're consenting to the use of this information for those purposes. If anybody has any technical issues, then just try and let Graham or I know. If we have to pause, that's fine. And finally, just for anyone who may be in an office together, we just a reminder that we have to observe any pandemic-related guidance and regulations. Okay, that's enough from me just now. I'm just going to check who we have here at the meeting, and I'll start first with the appellant. Mr. Hardy, I recognise you from an inquiry we did in Fort Augustus many years ago.
Yes.
So, good morning.
Good morning to you. Yes, so David Hardy acting for the appellant. There's just two of us from the appellant side on the call. So there's myself and then Pippa Gardner, who you can see on screen as well.
Morning.
Morning to you both. And who is here for the council, please?
Hi there, my name's Ian Davies. I'm the planning officer that's been dealing with the application.
Morning, Mr. Davies. Okay, and for Lars Community Council, it's Mr. Dippy, isn't it?
Oh, sorry, I had my microphone off. It's Ian Dippy, Lars Community Council.
Good morning. Yeah, don't worry. It sometimes takes a few minutes or a few moments just to transfer between mute and not. So we're used to that. That's absolutely fine. And for Skelmorlie Community Council, is that Mrs. Boyle there? Boyle, is that? I just see Skelmorlie Community Council guest, so I just want to make sure that it's yourself, Mrs. Boyle, that's here.
There you go. No.
Yes, Skelmorlie Community Council, Helen Boyle, chairperson.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning.
And Councillor Murdoch, you were helpfully telling me you could hear me earlier on, so I see you there. Would you just like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm Councillor Ian Murdoch. I'm an independent councillor for the North Coast and Cumbraes, and Skelmorlie and Labs are in my ward.
Okay, thank you. And so I also had expected, I'll come on to the other third parties in a minute, but Mr. Milne for Historic Environment Scotland.
Good morning, sir. Yes, Douglas Milne of Horton Fraser, acting on behalf of Historic Environment Scotland. I am accompanied this morning by a colleague and by members of Historic Environment Scotland. We are all in our large boardroom, socially distanced.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. I can see, I certainly saw earlier, Mr. Burley, is it Archie Burley? Mr. Burley, are you able to just introduce yourself, please? I'm not hearing from Mr. Burley, but I still see him there, so we can come back to him. And his interest is in the.
Sorry, I was actually microphone was off. Sorry.
That's fine.
Can you hear me now?
I can, Mr. Burley. Thanks very much. Good morning.
Good morning.
I was also expecting John Scott, who's also.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm down as Brian Stewart, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I'm here.
Sorry, Mr. Scott, you already reminded me of that. Apologies.
No worries.
That's going to test my powers of memory during the morning. And okay, that's everyone who I was necessarily expecting, but I can also see. Let's see. Well, actually, maybe it might be that other people are simply observing. Is there anyone else who was anticipating taking part in today's meeting who's not introduced themselves?
Yes, myself, Melvin Grosvenor, representing the Parkers, Tom and Alan Parker, and also acting in support of community councils and local residents.
Okay, no, that's good, Mr. Grosvenor. I'd heard that the Parkers weren't going to be taking part in the meeting today, but if you're here representing them, then that's helpful, because one of the things we have to discuss is a site visit, hopefully to see their property. Okay, that's great. I think that's everyone then, unless anyone else raises a hand. So I'll just go on to the second. It's just simply the purpose of the meeting, and I've already stated that it's just to sort out hopefully the procedural arrangements for the inquiry session and for the accompanying site inspections. So is everyone content with that, and we can just then move on to item 3? Is that okay? Okay, that's great. So item 3 then was the public inquiry session on the effects and the setting of towards Roman 4. And I had suggested 2 possible timescales for the exchange of written evidence for this and then for the inquiry session. However, it's been indicated on behalf of Historic Environment Scotland that it would struggle with either the May or June date. I'd suggested for the inquiry with August or September being suggested instead. Mr. Milne, it's a long time till August, and I was hoping that we could have the inquiry much earlier on that. Is there a particular issue with witness availability that's the problem?
Yes, thank you, sir. I'm afraid the issue is very much one of witness availability, and it's Historic Environment Scotland is intending to lead 2 or 3 witnesses, and all of those witnesses have got difficulties over the course of April, May, June and July, hence the suggestion of dates into August and September. I do regret that. I appreciate that you are understandably wishing to progress matters quickly, but the availability that we've put forward is the best that we have managed after intensive interrogation of the witnesses' diaries.
Okay, Mr. Hardy, first of all, have you got any thoughts on that? It's your appeal.
Yes, I mean, I do. The first thing I'll say is that the client wants to move on, and there needs to be expedition in the planning system. So that's a general principle. That is not to say that there shouldn't be fairness, but the overall overriding point is that the client wants to get on with this. I think, secondly, it is hugely disappointing to hear that by reason of unavailability, that we're now looking at dates in August or September, so 7 months away. It does seem to me that that's unreasonable, and why, whilst there is latitude that can be given, one may need to think about consolidating witnesses. The understanding is that as we're looking at calling 3 witnesses, maybe if 2 of those are available, that evidence can be telescoped, or indeed a different witness can be found. What we say is that we'd prefer the May dates. You've seen our dates of availability, so the timescale for option 1, Tuesday, 17th of May. We've also looked at other dates there or thereabouts, so the week of the May the 23rd, week of May the 30th, for instance, we can make ourselves available. So we're not saying it's got to be that day. Of course, there are things that happen, but a 3-week window seems to us to be fair. So it's always difficult. I know people's availability and people's witnesses of choice, but and obviously it will be a matter for you. You've got to strike the right balance. But this, we're here in February, and it does feel to us that having to wait until September is disproportionate for this scheme and for the applicant.
Okay, I think it was August or September, wasn't it? Mr. Milne, I was going to ask you. You mentioned 3 witnesses. Is the HES view that these are the only 3 people that possibly or adequately give me evidence on this matter?
Sir, as I had mentioned, I do regret having to suggest the August and September dates, and as I explained, a great deal of effort has been gone into to try and identify earlier dates, and part of that consideration has been looking at alternative witnesses, perhaps just leading 2. I'll come on and suggest later that a statement of agreed matters be explored in order to attempt to significantly reduce the evidence, perhaps thereby reduce the number of witnesses. And even looking at 2 witnesses, there are 2 experts who could be led here. That is leading us to the August and September dates. There aren't alternative witnesses who could be led, and in order that Historic Environment Scotland can properly present its case, it does rely upon being able to lead these witnesses, which does take us to the August date at the earliest.
So I wonder if just hearing that again, whether this is a helpful suggestion. It may be in terms of time that I think a day has been suggested, but even if it was 2 days, I find it very hard to understand that there isn't a 1 or 2 day gap between now and August. And I wonder whether Mr. Milne could provide a schedule of the dates of and the reasons for unavailability of the witnesses between now and August. And then if we can find a 2 day slot, then we can try and work with that. Seemed to me to be a helpful thing to do.
Councillor Murdoch, your hands up on the IT. Is that? Do you want to come in at this point, or is that just a remnant from earlier?
It is, and I don't want to step out of line with procedure, but I would like to say something on this, which is that I think in the interest of fairness and open and properly presented inquiry, that it doesn't really matter when it's done, as long as everybody, all the witnesses are available and able to take part. And if we have to wait longer, then we have to wait longer, because through this process, and it's taken a long time up to now, we have had to wait repeatedly during the process up to now when the applicant has lodged further documents, etc., etc. So why the hurry now?
Okay, no, I know that, and I do want to hurry. I want to, it's just striking that balance between progressing matters in a reasonable amount of time, and of course, as you say, I really need to hear all the evidence before I can make my decision on this. I need to properly understand people's views. Okay, I mean, we might not resolve this issue of timing today. And we'll come on to format later, but one thing that might be helpful to us is if we end up having the inquiry session virtually, then it brings in a bit more flexibility in terms of being able to programme sessions at shorter notice, or be a bit smarter about doing it. Mr. Hardy, you'd said a day or two, which Mr. Milne, for each yes, there might be 2 or 3 witnesses that are Mr. Burley and Mr. Scott are interested, want to give evidence. I don't know how many witnesses the appellant was planning to lead, what the council's view on this point was, but a couple of days sounds optimistic.
Yeah, okay, right. I was so maybe 3. We just be open about it. Intend to call 2 witnesses, so that sounds rather like 3 days, doesn't it? Hopefully, with a statement of agreed matters, that the issue can be focused. I think it also, I don't want to preempt things about what you want to hear about, but the questions about whether it is simply the impacts, so the heritage impacts, rather than bringing in strands of heritage policy, which when I've done these sessions before, reporters and inspectors have wanted to hear. But just leaving that aside, 3 days. I just go back to my point. I do find it difficult to understand that we can't find 3 days, say, between February the 17th and the 8th of August. And it would just be, I think, helpful to have a schedule of just indicating why those witnesses can't make it, between now and then. I mean, if we fight, and then there may be a period that we can identify and focus in on.
Okay, I'm going to come back to Mr. Milne in a minute, but first I want to bring in the council and Mr. Scott and Mr. Burley. For the council, is this, Mr. Davies, this is an issue that the council wants to give evidence on?
Yeah, thank you. I think we would like to see the sort of statement of agreed facts. That would be useful for us. We are available very generally in those time periods. If essentially we're looking at an argument between archaeologists for trying not to be too glib about it, the council wouldn't necessarily want to present any further evidence. If there's questions over the local development plan policies, then yes, we will, if required. But I think our evidence is likely to be that already submitted, to be honest. But we will be available, as I say, generally in the time periods suggested.
Okay, thank you. That's fine. Yeah, I'll need to think about that point. It's probably more going to be the technical side of it rather than the kind of policy side of it, I would have thought. Okay. Do you have a view then? We're slightly merging the issues in the agenda, but it's probably helpful just to do it. I put in the meeting note what our current position is, DPE's current position is in terms of having in-person meetings or having them virtually like this one. Does the council have a view, because that might help us with some of the issues that we're facing with timing? Does council have a view on whether if you were going to participate, whether it be in person would be better, or whether you would prefer to do it in this kind of format?
I think if it's online, it will be more flexible, just for the arrangements, because I couldn't confirm what venues would be available. Would we be able to use those venues? I suppose there's a lot more questions if it's a sort of a face-to-face session that has to be organised. So I think we would be happy to go with whatever's chosen, but the flexibility from an online meeting would be, I think, our first preference.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Scott, then. So I've got 2 questions. we say HES and the appellant will be leading professional witnesses. I would assume in most cases that yourself and Mr. Burley just want to give your own evidence rather than need an expert. But you can tell me if that's not the case. So that's the first question. You just want to confirm what you want to tell me about at the inquiry. But secondly, that question about whether we do it like this virtually or whether you would have a preference of doing it in person in a room somewhere.
Yeah, I'll not be like any expert kind of expertise. So it'll just be my opinion, sort of thing. And yeah, I'd rather do it in person if we could, even at the site, if that was a possibility. I think it'd be better to do it there than on a computer screen or in a boardroom somewhere.
Okay, thanks. I mean, certainly, yeah, I do plan to visit the site. The practicalities of having a kind of in-depth conversation on a windswept hill about the effects of the development can be awkward, but there is certainly scope for a site visit and some discussion at a site visit. Mr. Burley, what's your view on the kind of evidence you want to give, but also in person versus a virtual proceeding like this?
I don't have a problem with the virtual or even going on the personal point, going on the site to have a look with the people that are involved. I don't have a problem with any of that. In terms of timescales about the inquiry, the previous point by David Hardy, I would just one thing I would say that there's quite a large breeding colony of curlew up in that area. And any sort of disturbances in sort of May, June would cause a problem with these birds trying to get their young ones reared if there's a big party goes up there to have a look around. So I'll just make that point. The August might be the August date might be a better one for everybody concerned. Of course, the grass will be longer then as well, which is could be something you should think about.
On that point, there's a track that goes all the way up to the Roman fort. The grass wouldn't be an issue to get there, and I don't imagine the curlews will be a problem either, given that we gather sheep on quad bikes with dogs and all that throughout the year. So, in my opinion, the earlier the better.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear there's a track. I couldn't find it when I was out and about a few months ago. That's one I've not been in the site of the fort yet. Okay, right, Mr. Milne, just before I close off on this issue, I don't think I'm going to have to go away, I think, and just reflect on what's the best way to do this. But I guess for you then, virtual versus in person, does HES have any preference? And I suppose I'm just asking, Mr. Hardy's request was if you were possible, given the flexibility the virtual proceedings allow, if you could winnow out a day or two here and there between now and August, is that something that you could at least go back to your clients and discuss whether that would be possible?
Sir, as I'd mentioned, we've spent a lot of time trying to identify earlier dates. Now, one of the difficulties now, of course, there is the occasional date where individual witnesses would be available, but we have factored into our assessment of availability the timetable for preparing evidence. It's not very helpful if a witness is off the 2 weeks before precognitions have to be lodged, for example, after reports have been made available, and the overall assessment has taken us to the August date. Now, of course, we can look at things again, but I don't think the position here is going to change materially, which I do regret. As regards the procedure that we use, virtually or in person, Historic Environment Scotland is neutral on that and is happy for you, sir, to form a view based on what the other parties have said. As regards duration, based on what I am hearing today and on very recent experience, we usually say that 2 days is sufficient to deal with an objection of this nature, but given the number of parties, and again, with procedure potentially taking place online, 3 days would seem to be perhaps a safer bet for being able to cover everything without having to get involved in a continuation. That certainly doesn't mean that Historic Environment Scotland will not engage fully on attempting to narrow the issues through discussion around a statement of agreed matters. The final thing that I did want to mention, Mr. Hardy had referred to this, and I had alluded to it earlier, is the role of policy in terms of the proceedings. Now, to date, I'm aware of the fact that you issued a procedure notice to other parties regarding policy, for example, an update in relation to the draft NPF4. What Historic Environment Scotland, again, tend to do in proceedings like this and is intending to do here is to set out its position regarding policy in its evidence for the inquiry session. So it may be that policy is explored to some extent at the inquiry session, albeit the main focus will be on an assessment of setting and an assessment of impact on the integrity of that setting. But I'm sure that the appellant and HES can, as I say, work together again in attempt to, will not be wasting time on a consideration of policy if matters can be agreed. I'm sorry you don't have a number of questions, but HES is keen to assist the inquiry in terms of its view on appropriate policy and the application of that policy.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. So before we move on just from this item, a couple of things. Mr. Hardy, I forgot to ask you, I'd asked everyone else, virtual versus in person, and whether the appellants have got a preference one way or the other.
If I may, there's three observations. One, virtual or physical. Virtual, I think they work very well, and I think they provide flexibility, which seems to be important here. So, we're not going to down a ditch over that, but virtual is absolutely fine. The second thing, just listening again to dates, and it's a matter which I do find very difficult, normally in this sort of situation. But what HES appeared to be saying was that it wasn't witness unavailability, but it was also comfort in relation to lead-in times and holidays and whatever else. Everybody has to deal with timescales. We're in exactly the same position. And the idea of having sufficient time to allow three witnesses to, the perfect run into preparation of precognitions and so on, I don't think is, with respect, is fair and proportionate. And there's a need to get on. And I suspect if Mr. Milne produced a schedule of availability, which again I'm going to urge, because I'm afraid I just cannot see that that there's no availability through till August. It would be extraordinary. That I think we will find 3 days that can be used. And the third thing is, it seems that has almost, because this is what we do, we were going to include policy matters in our, in the evidence anyway. And it does seem to me that that's really a matter that you would have to rule on, because as the note stands, we'd rather seen that as being the technical aspects of impact, so impact analysis only. And if HES are going to put in policy matters, then everybody else would need to have an equal opportunity to put in matters of dealing with policy as well. I have to say, I don't think it's as straightforward as that, because you may say, I don't need that, or that can be done in writing, and we don't need HES to set out the basic rudiments of the system. We know that it would be more subjective stuff, and I think you could decide either you've got to have that in writing, so it's all in or all out, for everybody. And I've got no strong view on that, but if what I would want to guard against is people being disarmed or at a disadvantage by HES doing something that just because they say that that's what we usually do as sort of custom and practice. So just some direction from you about what's going to help you, sir, in terms of resolving the issues.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll have a think about that point. yes, I mean, just from recollection of recent inquiries, our recent appeals and Section 76, Section 36 cases, the interpretation of policy has featured to varying or lesser degrees in the meaning of policy, and so it might not be an issue that can be wholly avoided if there are different views on that. And it might be that, for example, updated position statements can set out people's understanding of what the policy context is and what it means, and if there's agreement on that, then that's fine. And if there's not, then I'd be happy to hear about it. I don't, until I know what people's detailed positions are on what the policy
Yes,
means.
of course. Yeah,
question.
it's hard to form a view. Yeah.
Okay, so final thing I'll say then, that I'm just going to have to reflect on this. I reflect on your request that Mr. Milne, and I hear his caveats though, that if he is able to go away and at least see if there are some dates that can be bottomed out, I'll consider whether to put that in the note of the meeting. In any event, however timescale we work to, my kind of choreography, the proposed process, I had anticipated we would have inquiry statements exchanged, we would have inquiry documents produced, and would have a statement of agreed matters, for simplicity, all on the same day, or in a chunk. I'm happy to do it differently, people think. And then just after that, an exchange of recognitions, and after that, start of the inquiry. So whatever dates they are, does that in a simplified process seem reasonable to everyone?
Yes, we're entirely happy with that. I think there's a risk of some repetition. Recent experience has been you can end up getting the same documents repeated sort of 3 times with statement. But I think that's it. We're alive to that, and we will just make sure that they aren't the same documents reproduced 3 times, and that you may get something once, and then we say, look, we don't need to add to that, or we'll be judicious about it.
Okay, thanks. And for Mr. Scott and Mr. Burley, just so I'll try and put this in the note of the meeting, but the idea would be after this, we just confirm that we're all participating. We don't expect that to change. An inquiry, then at some point, an inquiry statement is just you're setting out of your case, the evidence you're going to lead, who's going to give it, what documents you're going to rely on, and then the recognition, which follows that, is simply a shorter written statement of your views, which we can either read out at the inquiry, or we can take it as read. But then you be questioned on, or you could be questioned on it by the other parties. So I'll try and set out an explanation of that in the note of the meeting. Okay, so that's probably as far as we can take, I think. The inquiry session just now.
Sir, may I ask one question on behalf of HES about the timetable once a date has been found for the inquiry, and that's really just to ask about inquiry statements and inquiry documents being produced on the same date, because we're anticipating that inquiry documents will include a report or reports prepared by our witnesses, and then recognitions 2 weeks later, effectively being parties' responses to their opposite numbers reports. Now, if the inquiry statements are to fulfil the most helpful role, I have tended to find it's useful to see them in advance of parties preparing their reports. So I wonder if it would be possible for the inquiry statements to, I'm not particularly concerned about the amount of time given, but enough time given so as that they can be considered, and then reports prepared in order that they focus on the issues, which will hopefully have been narrowed down in the inquiry statements. And this may help in relation to the discussion we're having regarding policy, for example, and the role that it will actually have to play in any inquiry session. So perhaps inquiry statements 8 weeks from today's date, or 12 weeks from before the beginning of the inquiry session. So as everything falls into that order of inquiry statement, a couple of weeks, documents including reports 2 weeks, recognitions 2 weeks, inquiry.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I don't have a strong view on that. I'm quite happy to go along with that kind of approach if you think that would help, possibly help narrow things down. Unless there's any other comments, I happily just move on. Sorry, Councillor Murdoch, I spotted that you have a hand up, as do you, Mr. Burley, so I'll come back to you in a moment. Councillor Murdoch.
Yeah, but just more or less to reiterate what I said earlier, because Mr. Hardy seems to be putting a strong case forward for some urgency here. And as I said before, community councils, a councillor such as myself and my constituents, we don't have the expertise that these people have in this process. And if it needs to take longer, it needs to take longer. As I said before, throughout the planning process, we, my constituents, have had to wait time and time again while other documentation was lodged and delays or, were in place to allow that documentation to be lodged. So I would ask that if we're waiting availability from any part of this, then that's just the way it has to be. But I'll leave that to you to decide. I'm asking you if you would take that into account.
Sure. No, of course, that's not. Mr. Burley, your hand's up on the screen as well.
Yeah, that's just a small point. I'm unfortunately going to have to leave the meeting, Mr. Riddle, and I thank you for your time. Very interesting, and I look forward to hearing the next steps along the way. So thank you very much for all of you for your help today. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Burley. Bye-bye. Okay. If we can move on then, I think, if everyone's happy to do to the accompanied site inspections. So I think these are probably 2 or 3 batches. I've been to quite a lot of the locations in the evidence in terms of landscape and visual effects. Closer by, I've been in and around Skelmorlie. I've been up the track where the various houses are nearest the site. I can't remember the name of that little road. I've been up as far as Dykes Farm and Michaelston. I've not been right up on the appeal site, which I'd like to do. I'd like to have a visit to Bar Farm, which is the appellant's farm, I think. And I'd like to do an accompanied site inspection to Dykes and Michaelston with Tom and Alan Parker. So it seems to me that those 3 things could probably be done together. My anticipation, people can tell me if they want to come along, my anticipation would be that for the appeal site and for Bar Farm, it would be myself, the appellant and the council. Anyone else wants to do those, they can tell me. And then for Dykes and Michaelston, the same parties with Tom and Alan Parker. So I suppose, Mr. Grosvenor, first of all, does that sound is that sound sufficient for your clients that we would do all that? I was thinking we could do all that in the same day, and possibly I would visit the appeal site in Bar Farm first with the appellant and the council, and then we could all meet with Tom and Alan Parker and yourself perhaps at Dykes Farm. Does that sound?
Yes, that's fine. I certainly, my availability is changing, and I will more than likely be present. There is a suggestion, I just want to drop this in at this stage, that there ought to be a site visit at Bar Hill Camp as well. So that's not factored in here. We feel that that ought to be discussed. And the site visit there, company site visit there. I don't know whether you've visited Bar Hill Camp.
I've went right past the front gate of it because that's on the track, isn't it? But I didn't go into the camp itself.
Well, sorry. We feel it's important that you actually go into the camp itself.
Okay, and Mr. Hardy, the camp. You might be unsighted in this, but I think I think that's in the ownership of the appellant. Is that correct?
I'll have to take instructions. I thought you were going to ask what was my view. I mean, anything that anybody wants you to have a look at is our view.
Yeah.
If that's the just to factor into the itinerary for a site visit.
Okay. Well, maybe I think Scott, you were nodding when I said that's in the appellant's ownership. Is that right?
Yeah, it's in our ownership. Yeah. I actually live at Bar Farm, so
All right.
when you go to Bar Farm, I'll probably be there.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm not resistant to doing that. It's right beside, obviously, where we were going to be anyway. So it wouldn't be any great extra time or problem for me to have a look, to visit the camp, Mr. Grosvenor. Albeit, I know, much of the evidence I have in relation to effects in the camp is about noise, and that's not a subject that I'm planning to have any further procedures on. So I just make that kind of caveat that I wouldn't be having a discussion about noise issues there. But if it's the case of visiting it, better understanding its relationship with the site, then of course that's fine. Okay. I mean, I'm not going to try. I don't. You can tell me if you think otherwise. It's probably not a good idea to try and sort out dates today for these site inspections. It's probably just worth doing that separately with each discrete party, if you like, for the site inspections. It's just who's going where. It's probably the main thing to sort out. So we have one event, if you like, which is the appeal site, Bar Farm, and then Dykes and Michelson, and unless anyone tells me otherwise, Parker, you said you'll be there, but it's the appellant, the council, myself, and then Tom and Alan Parker. Mr. Davies, for the council's point of view, it's just usually helpful to have the council official at the accompanying site inspections. Does that sound okay for the council?
Yeah, if it's not me, it'll be one of the other planning officers, depending on the dates.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so if we just move on then to
Mr. Okay, sorry.
I
apologise for interrupting, but I would like to be on all the site visits if that's possible, and the hearings, because as the elected member for the ward, every single part of every element of this application is within my ward.
Okay, I have no problem with that. In terms of getting out on the site itself, it's just making sure we can all do that safely with the right equipment and so forth. But and subject to it also needs landowners' agreement if everyone is going to go on board. But hopefully that's not an issue. It'll still be a small party of us going up the hill, if you like. You say in terms of hearings as well. I mean, all we have is the public inquiry, which you're not opted into. It's not something you gave me evidence on. Therefore, I didn't ask you if you wanted to take part in the inquiry. But of course, you'd be welcome to observe that as any member of the public is. So let's go into Routenburn Road. So, and Councillor Murdoch, then, if I can start with you, I've already walked, stroke driven the length of the road. I got off and walked to places. I doubled back. I took my car up and stopped quite often. So I think I've got a pretty good understanding of the kind of concerns that people have raised, or the issues that are before me. But I do want to give yourself and both the community councils a chance to walk it with me, or to visit it with me, to illustrate the points that you've made in evidence. Your suggestion was that we just simply walk it from north to south. Sorry, from south to north. Which for my part, I'm content to do that. I mean, it's probably, what is that, 3 or 4 miles, something like that, 5 or 6 kilometres. It just depends on everyone else being content that that's a kind of safe and achievable thing for them to do as well, and they needn't come the whole way if they just wanted to show me part of it. So that was your suggestion. Mrs. Boyle, for Skelmorlie Community Council, as I'd saying there, Mr. Murdoch's idea is that Councillor Murdoch's idea is that we would just meet at the south part of the road and walk along it, and you could point out what you wanted to. How does that sound to you?
Sounds all right.
And Mr. Dippy?
Yes, I would be happy to walk the whole road. Could I suggest, you mentioned south to north. I think possibly the other way round might be more appropriate, travelling from the site down in towards Largs. Are there any specific areas that you want to ask questions about on that road? Or is it a case of just better understanding our concerns?
Probably more the latter. So I've walked it with all the drawings from the additional environmental information that show where the road would be widened, where the verges would be oversailed. You know, all those detailed drawings. And so I think I have a reasonable understanding of where those works to the roads would be required. But people have addressed me in detail as to some of that. So I suppose I'd envisage if there's a particular stand of trees or if there's a particular awkward corner that people think I need to be aware of, albeit I've already done that, I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything that people have. So, but however, by the time we get on site, I might have more detailed questions that I would be asking you. It's just going to depend, but it's really just to help me make sure that I fully understand people's views on or concerns, if you like, about the effects on the road.
Could I make a comment that on the road itself, my understanding is that the whole road from the site to the golf course, car park and Largs will be widened because none of it meets the 4.5 metre width requirement.
Well, that's. I mean, I've got evidence in that. It's probably something, if we're on site with the drawings, that we can have a look at, just so as people are clear about what those drawings are showing. Mr. Hardy, does the appellant have a view on how best to do this?
No, I'm just listening with interest. I think that the general point I made was that this is all to inform you so that you've got best information, and we will help and facilitate with that. So I have no issues really with anything I've heard. I think the only thing I would it's only a small point, but the transport route goes south to north. I don't think it makes any difference, but that's just an observation.
Yeah, of course vehicles would be going two-way, but they would be coming laden south to north and unladen north to south, which maybe makes
it's not a big point. You can turn around and look the other way, but I just think that's all I've got to say.
Yeah.
Sorry, I apologise for jumping in, but it's more to do with the steepness of the hill. It's an easier walk from north to south.
As I say, Mr. Miller, I am agnostic about all of this. I think just as long as the reporter gets all the information, that's the name of the game.
Okay, that's like, so sorry, Councillor Murdoch. Maybe I just noted that you'd suggested south to north. Had you suggested the other way around?
No, I actually had suggested the other way around. I don't know how that's, but the if you're starting at Nether Hall, you've got the steep part if you're going from south to north, whereas if you start the other way around, it's a lesser incline and a much easier walk.
Yeah, of course, you're coming down the hill overall. Okay. Okay, finally, I mean, one of our considerations is, of course, if we can do this safely. But I think if we're all wearing high-vis or similar bright clothes, and are alert enough that it's a quiet road, I'm happy enough that we could do it safely as long as it's quite a small group. Mr. Davis, again, I'd always have been inviting the council to this visit. Does the council get any concerns or views on how we conduct that one?
No, but whichever direction. Obviously, if you go one direction, you'll have to potentially turn around and walk back the other direction. So I would just suggest if it was south to north, it's easier to get parked at the southern end than it is at the northern end and all the rest of it. But that'd be entirely up to you.
Okay, yeah, that I was my plan would be that people would have to make their own arrangements for getting picked up at whatever the far end was. But okay, that's fine. I think rather than try and work out a date for this now, I think we'll just write out people involved in that, and maybe with 2 or 3 dates, and ask when it's going to be suitable. We often I'd try and do this the same week of the inquiry, just because that helps with people's diaries. But given that the week of the inquiry is an uncertain thing and it might be virtual anyway, I think I'll just kind of press on and just try and suggest some dates for these. And finally, then we would have a visit to the fort, or the site of the fort. I think probably that would be best done either right at the start or right at the end of, the day before or day after the inquiry session itself. I don't know if people have got strong views about that, Mr. Hardy.
I always think it's sensible. I mean, even if you have to do, just take half a step back, I think it rather depends on whether this is virtual or physical. Of course, I was about to say, if it's a physical event, it would be proximate to the site. What I do think is helpful is an initial site visit before you talk about the issues and the possibility of going back to examine the points of detail that have arisen. I think that's a useful thing to do. However, if this is going to be virtual, of course, that doesn't really apply. And I'm not sure about the distance that you're traveling. I suspect it's some way. I would have thought before. I'd have thought for you to understand the asset and to have in your mind's eye what we're going to be talking about in discussion and questioning. I'd have thought before was sensible.
Okay, Mr. Milne, have you got thoughts about this?
No, I agree with Mr. Hardy. I think once you have the evidence, once you have reports and precognitions and have had a chance to look at those, then seeing the fort before the evidence, the oral evidence is heard is very useful. From my own personal experience, I only properly understand these things once I've seen them. So I think that what Mr. Hardy has said there is spot on.
Okay, that's fine. I don't know if there's any other views on that, but that seems perfectly sensible to me. Okay, this is one of those pre-examination meetings where we haven't really bottomed anything out in particular, but at least in terms of the site visits, I think we know how we're going to conduct them and who's going to be involved in each. Mrs. Boyle, sorry, your hand is up there.
Yes. Regarding the Roman fort at Bad Farm, Meagle, where the archaeology dig took place to discover the Celtic roundhouses that are in that area, has that all been taken care of, as well as the Roman fortlet? It's all in the same area.
So
has there been any mention of the Celtic roundhouses in any of these reports?
I'd have to check what the environmental impact assessment says or doesn't say about that. I can't remember off the top of my head. I will check.
Right, thank you.
But certainly the inquiry session that I want to have is just about the effects on the setting of the scheduled fort. Okay. Right. So what have we got? I'll write a note up of this meeting. I'll have to think about the inquiry session and timetable and arrangements for that, and what I'm going to ask people to do. More straightforward, hopefully. I can confirm what we've talked about in terms of the site inspections, and then start to try and make the arrangements for doing those. And that may be 2 or 3 separate days, just for the logistics. I don't have to travel so far that's a problem. But obviously I'm aware of other people's availability. Okay, I think we've probably covered as much as we can usefully cover this morning. Is there anything else that people think we need to discuss or that we've missed out before we close off the meeting? Mr. Hardy.
Yes, just one question. Let me turn and remove my hand. Is in relation to closing submissions, because I mean, there's lots of unanswered questions, whether or not you're going to have policy elements to this or not. But of course, if it was just impact analysis, then that would need to be set in a broader context, and there is a balance on any basis. And it seems to me that what we're going to come down to is a difference on the degree of impact, probably a high degree of a consensus in relation to the policy itself. But that all then has to be set into the broader decision, the broader planning balance. So the question is whether or not you want to have closing submissions, and if so, whether they are going to be very short, limited closing submissions just on impact analysis on the heritage assets, or whether actually you would welcome more general closing submissions which help you in terms of the planning balance. And I think it seems to me it would be. It seems to me, I mean, it's a matter for you, sir, entirely, but it would be helpful to you to have fuller closing submissions. So not just dealing with heritage impact, but dealing with the other issues as well. So I wonder whether you might just give some thought to that in your notes. The final point I would say is if it's just going to be heritage impacts, if that's all it's going to be, I'm not sure if you take a note, as I'm sure you will, of the evidence that's given at the inquiry session on top of the written materials that you have, that you'll need closing submissions on that topic alone. I suspect they'll have been done to death by statements of case and then statements of agreed matters plus precognitions. I don't think you'll need them for that. I do think they'd be helpful on a broader basis for the decision overall.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll have a think about that. I suppose there are. I'm only having an inquiry, and therefore we're only going to be having more evidence in relation to historic environment. There are a whole range of representations covering noise, landscape and visual effects, traffic, and they'll all have to be taken into the planning balance. And so it might be to have an inquiry session on a very narrow point and then to closing submissions, widening it back up again might not work so well if we haven't had evidence and all those other things.
It's tricky, isn't it? Exactly what I suppose the crux of this is that, and weight is obviously a matter for you, but with planning, it's all about weight, isn't it? In the planning balance, it's about weight that you give to impacts, weight that you give to to significance of assets and so on. So it's whether or not there's an opportunity you would be assisted by submissions of the parties on the relative weight to be given to all of those different matters to allow you to come to a sound planning judgment. Now, if you feel as though you don't need that, then I think I'd probably say it's all or nothing, because I'm not sure how assisted you're going to be by closing submissions at the end of a very focused session on heritage impact, given that you are going to have all the written material and will be taking a note of that session. So I think it's just something to think about, and it's a curiosity, if you like, of having a very specific focused session within the ambit of a broader planning decision that you've got to make.
Yeah, it is, because in most Section 36 cases, the evidence at the inquiry is much broader.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, I think I will think about that, and if anybody's got any other views on it just now, they can tell me. At present, I'd be minded not to have closing submissions on that wider planning balance, because that's just something I'm going to have to do, and I've got a lot of views on it already.
Yes.
Closing submissions, I think we can just see where we are at the end of the inquiry. Often positions can change, things get revealed, issues come up during the course of an inquiry that the parties sometimes feel they want to just nail down in closing submissions.
I'm not against it. I think it's just something for you to think about, and at the end of the day, this is to try and help you, and it's what you would find useful.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry If I may say just while that thought's in everyone's minds, obviously Historic Environment Scotland will not be wanting to lodge a submission on broader issues or on the planning balance. Their position is focused on this particular issue. However, I would still happy to keep things under review, of course, and it's absolutely correct to say that whatever helps you is what parties should be producing. But even fairly short closing submissions to say what parties think ought to be taken from this focused session, I would thought would still be of some use. So at this point in time, I would be inclined to think that the production of short focused written submissions, closing submissions, would be of some worth at the close of this inquiry session.
Okay, Mr. Davis, your hand's up there, sorry.
Thanks. Yes, it was just on the wider point. I mean, essentially, this inquiry is reason for refusal number 2 of 5, and I don't see any value in sort of the broader weight of other issues being raised at the end of that inquiry session. As HES have said, if you want a closing submission about reason for refusal number 2, that would be entirely for yourself. From the council's point of view, we feel we've addressed issues of weight and the wider planning balance in the submissions we've already made. We don't feel that there's any need for any additional statements to that effect. Reason for refusal number 2 might change through the inquiry, and that's the whole point of that inquiry. But the numbers 1, 3, 4 and 5 we should remain unaffected by the inquiry.
Okay, fine, thank you. Mrs. Boyle, you've got the hand still up. Is that on the screen? Is that from earlier on, or is there something you want to come on just now?
Just a mistake.
Okay, right. If that's everything, thanks very much. I know we've still got a few things still to bottom out. We'll try and do that as best we can. It's Thursday now, isn't it? So I'll try and get this note out either tomorrow or early next week. And there's probably going to be some exchanges after that before we can talk about all the regions. But thank you all very much for taking part this morning. It's helpful. We move things along to a degree at least, so I'm grateful. So unless there's anything else, I'm just going to say thank you and close the meeting.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.